All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We are very happy to have Tommy Chow with us here. Tommy?
What's up, guys? It's a pleasure to be here. Super grateful to be with you all.
So, Tommy's a realtor in Chicago. I think you've been licensed for about 15 years. You
Yep,
were the National Association of Realtors Vice President of Association Affairs in 2021. You are now the co-founder and owner of your partner's last name?
Weinberg Choi
Weinberg,
Residential.
yeah, at Keller Williams, Lincoln Park, with your business partner and college friend. They formed their team back in 2007. The team has sold more than 1,000 properties, generating more than 500 million in sales volume. We constantly rank among the top 10 real estate teams in the city and are among the Chicago Association's platinum producers in sales and gold producers in units. 2019, you were the Chicago Association of Realtors' first Korean American president in the association's 135-year history. In that same year, you also chaired NAR's Young Professional Network Advisory Board, the national network which helps young real estate professionals grow their careers and leadership skills. You also sit on NAR's governance Game Changer PAG and the Realtor Property Resource RPR Advisory Board. In 2020, you were named Chicago Association's Realtor of the Year, 40 under, and you were also the 40 under 40 class of 2020. For Tommy, the impact of owning a home is more than financial, as you told that magazine. You are a Korean immigrant. Your Korean immigrant grandfather was proud of your home, not only because you had a roof over his head, but because this piece of America was his. I love that. Tommy, you live on the north side of Chicago with your wife, Tesha, sorry,
Close
and your
though.
3 daughters and your dog. And your dream home must have a custom sneaker closet for more than 97 pairs of Air Jordans.
That's
Welcome.
true. Thank you. And man, you didn't have to read all
There
that
you
boring
go.
stuff. I feel like in 2022, we should just be able to say, hey, this is Tommy Choi. Just Google him. Right. There's information out there. Although I have to say that's an old bio because we're at 1,200 units and 700 million in volume now. So not
And
that
growing,
matters.
and
Not
growing.
that matters.
So why don't you kick us off?
Does it always feel weird to hear your own bio, or when you hear people reading all this
It's
stuff back and you're waiting, okay, let's go. I always feel
I'm
impatient.
always like, let's go, because it's like boring to me. It's not like,
Yeah.
cool stuff, but I get it. I appreciate the formality and the respect though.
It's and when I'm talking to Matt or talking about Matt, he's the same way. He almost cuts me off and let's go. Nobody wants to take that praise in this industry. But anyway, appreciate you being here for sure.
It's
But
my
it's
honor.
important to me because you've done some really cool things, and it's there's different levels of those things. There's things that you've done yourself, and there's things that you've basically done as like a volunteer and you've given. Right?
Yeah.
There's things that you've accomplished, and then there's things that you've given and or been volunteered away. And it's just amazing and those need to be told. And I think there's a lot that we can all learn from that. Like I first got on your track through some of the Inman stuff. I think that
Yeah.
was first kind of, how I learned about you and was, learning about what you do and how awesome you are. So can you just maybe tell us about your story? Maybe some of the earlier stuff.
Yeah.
And just how you kind of got to be where you are.
So no, yeah, I'll tell you what, it starts with, you kind of teased it a little bit. I feel like you did my Batman Begins origin story here, telling my grandfather's thing. So my grandfather, he immigrated here to the north side of the city. If anyone's ever been to Wrigley Field, seen a Cubs game, I live 6 blocks west and my family immigrated 3 blocks north of the stadium. So my grandpa, just like every immigrant, I can say that's leaving their home to go somewhere foreign, it's usually because they want opportunity and seek out opportunity. And for him, a big chunk of that opportunity was home ownership. And it wasn't from the practical standpoint of having, the roof over your head. It was more so, as you quoted, right? Pride. He wanted to be able to put his stake in the ground and say that piece of Chicago, that piece of America was his. He owned it because he worked his butt off to achieve that dream, right? And so he always reminded me this at a very, very young age, right? just because you were born here, don't get it twisted. Home ownership is not a guarantee or a right. It's a privilege. You have to work hard to achieve that. And you work even harder to continue to maintain that honor. I thought as a little kid, my grandpa was just old and senile and a weirdo. I'm like, why are you telling me this? Great. Cool. Like, what do I do with this information? Right. But right later in life, I realize, right, that's why we have to be so intentional and purposeful on the words we choose to put out into the universe, because they're seeds that we plant. And sometime in the future, they'll start to sprout. And for me, they sprouted when I was at this corporate crossroads. My first job after college was with this Fortune 100 company, and they were an IT sales company, right? A reseller. So I was literally cold calling, making 130 cold calls a day, Monday through Friday, to state and local government, municipality owned hospitals, calling those IT directors, right? And no offense to any IT director that's watching this, but those conversations, pretty dry, right? It was like I went to what, in the States is equivalent to the DMV, right? Where we get our driver's license 130 times a day. It was miserable. I was getting hung up on telling, to go F myself. I did really well though, right? Because for me, if you give me a formula of like success, make these many calls for this many time and you'll get X amount results, I'll follow it. And I did that for 4 years, did really well, making a 6-figure income, bought a condo. But every day I woke up, the first thought that entered my head was, what day of the week is it? And how many days away from the weekend, right? I was literally living that song, like working for the weekend, and I was just miserable. And so when I was at that crossroads of like, I need to do something, right? For me at that point, and I think this is common for many young people, is that, we equate success to what like our W-2 or 1099 says at the end of the year. So for me, as 25 years old, making, $130,000 a year, I was like, man, right? Success, but I was so miserable.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, listen, I got to reverse engineer this process and I need to chase happiness. What's going to make me happy, right? And that's when those weird words from my grandpa started to sprout in my head, right? This idea of home ownership. I had just bought a condo, right? I mentioned that earlier. This process was fresh in my head, and all of a sudden I had a spotlight, right, on real estate and the industry. And that's what I went into doing. And for me, right, people are always like, so how'd you know that makes you happy, right? Real estate does not bring me joy and bring me happiness, right? What does is that real estate is a platform, right? It's a stage that I get to stand on. And what brings me joy is what I get to perform for my audience every day on this stage and platform that this industry provides. And ultimately, it's curating and cultivating relationships with people, right? That's why I wake up happy. I don't care what day of the week it is, because I enjoy that. And through that experience, we get so many opportunities to support people in their real estate needs, right? So that's kind of how all this came about. And, now going on 16 years later, I'm still here smiling year to year and just, doing this at a high level and trying to make as much of an impact that I can.
But you're also, I think, when did you start getting involved in volunteering in organized real estate?
Great question.
Yeah.
It was right around like 2010, 2011. Okay. And there's this thing, right, that you're familiar with called the Young Professionals Network that had just launched by the National Association of Realtors. And my homie, Greg Pekarsky, shout out to Greg. He's a highly successful top 10 realtor, just like myself in Chicago. We came up together. He was a 30 under 30. He helped sublet his apartment to this guy named Rob Reuter, who just so happened to work at NAR. And he was they were talking and he's like, yeah, I'm in charge of this new thing called the Young Professionals Network. You should try and get involved in this. And so Chicago, we just launched a YPN at that time. And that's when I started to get involved with it. But I'll tell you what got me there, right? The first entry point was wanting a sense of belonging and inclusion, right? Meaning in our industry, right? You all remember when you first started, it can feel like a very lonely place. Like we're almost like we're on an island by ourselves and there's no other forms of civilization there. So I didn't know at the time whether the struggles that I was facing, the challenges I was facing, if that was just proprietary to me and maybe I wasn't cut out for this industry, or if this was something that was a part of growing pains for anyone coming into this industry. I didn't have anyone to go to. And so this YPN thing started. I went to check it out. And for the first time, I still remember in River North, downtown part of Chicago, for those of you who came, there's this bar called Theory. We went to Theory. That's where the event was. I met all these people that were like me, not just from like an age standpoint, right? Being young, but the same mindset, right? Ones that were coming from contribution, were willing to share and pour into each other. And that's when I started to hear stories from other people on their struggles and challenges. I'm like, holy shit, they face the same issues I do. I'm not an idiot, right? Well, not fully an idiot in real estate and a moron. I can do this. So it gave me the courage and confidence to keep going, because these struggles I was facing wasn't just me not cut out for it, right? And that's a power of inclusion, right? That's what the YPN did. But then I continue to give back year over year and continue to raise the bar at a high level, because then that piece changed to gratitude, right? I was so grateful that I had this kind of community, this realtor community that really literally kept me in the industry. And then when I started to see continued success within the industry, I had gratitude for what it meant to be a realtor, with all the opportunities that's provided myself, my business partner, my team, my family, right? I wanted to make sure that 2006 version of me, who was burnt out in that corporate world, that was miserable, seeking happiness and higher levels of success, that door was still open for that person today. And so for me, I needed to wedge my foot in that door, make sure that threshold always stays open for other people to come and see, whether it's the same amount of success or even higher, right? And then at the same time, looking in front of the dashboard, right? And what lies ahead of us to continue to make sure that our industry is protected, not just for us to continue to work, but for our consumers, right? So that private property rights are something that we can dig a deep moat around and make sure it's protected so everyone has that fair shot at it. So that's kind of where all this stuff evolved into.
I want to keep on the YPN topic for a little bit, because I last saw you in person at NAR's YPN leadership event.
Yep.
And I don't remember, I don't think it was a quote from you. I think it was a quote from someone else, but it was about always trying to find someone to replace yourself. And it was kind of like a little motto within YPN, which I loved. I love that philosophy, right? Because often in organized real estate, we find people kind of get on a board and then they stick on a board, or they'll stick in a spot and they'll just kind of remain on there for 5 years, 10 years, right? And I love the philosophy that I'm going to associate it with YPN. Was like, try and find someone to replace yourself.
Yes.
Right. And I love that. And as you continue to change paths and grow and, move within that, I feel like you're maybe not doing it on purpose, but you're doing the same thing. And you still attended this event that was being held through NAR, and you were just pouring in, you were giving back. Right.
Yeah. You have to, something I believe in is, right, you cannot be what you cannot see. Right. So part of that is continue to be that example, but also extending your hand behind you and saying, come on, let me help uplift you, right? It's like the last thing we want, and it's tough with the YPN because it's such a tight-knit community of like-minded realtors that just like love on each other, support each other. It's hard to leave that group, right? But the last thing you want to do is like be, Matthew McConaughey in Dazed and Confused, right? Hanging out, right? Being like, yeah, I get older, they still stay the same age, right? You got to be able to replace yourself, as we say, right? And find that next person, tap them on the shoulder, encourage them like, hey, you need to ascend to this, right? And be that beckon leader for someone else coming up from behind you. One of my favorite leaders in the world, Nelson Mandela, right? I read everything and have read everything about him. One of my favorite things about what he said, with how much he fought for democracy in South Africa, he could have been the South African president forever, right? But after his first term, he stepped down and he said, in order for democracy to work, I have to step away for other people to come in. Same thing with the YPN. In order for us to continue to top grade and blow the lid off of our potential and raise that bar, we all have to continue to walk away, find replacements to come in and let them take over, right? And steer the ship. And that's where, YPN's done such a great job of that culture and embracing that.
And one more quote that I loved from that specific conference, and you actually put it in a private chat, and I've continued to play with it, and I've thrown it. I had to do a presentation when I got back, and I was like, the headline of my thing was that if someone tells you that you're the future leaders, and you were basically talking to the YPN committees. If someone tells you that you're the future leaders of this industry, tell them to go fuck themselves, because you're today's leaders.
Sure.
And I love that, right? I love that, because YPN is that place where everyone gets their start, but they've basically been like, they're there now, and they're leading people already,
right.
and they shouldn't be told that they're going to, because they're doing it right now. I love
totally. That. Yeah, no, listen, we're not the minor leagues anymore. We're not a place to develop players to call up to the big show, right? When they're ready. We are the major leagues, right? This is where we're seeing the ball moving down the field. We're seeing ideation at the highest level, right? We're seeing visionaries come out and really push the way we think. These thought leaders, we are today's leaders, right? Helping shape what tomorrow is going to look like. So it's something that I think, and it's important to understand that, because that shifts the mindset and the way you look at things when you're not as like, oh yeah, I can't speak up because I'm not, the leader today, right? I'm ascending to that. No, you are, right? Your voice should be heard and matters just as much as anyone else in that room.
We're talking about leadership, and we're talking about, volunteering essentially, and organized real estate around here. It feels like we're seeing sort of a lack of engagement, a lack of people wanting to jump in, and I don't know what the reasons are. Are you seeing the same thing? Are you finding it harder to find those next generation voices, those next generation, events and things that people can, dig into? Are you seeing acclamations at board and other levels of organized real estate, engagement stuff, or is that just sort of local or regional around here?
You know what, that's such a great question. And I think that's consistent everywhere, right? Because there's always going to be, right, the people, right, the mindset of like, well, what's in it for me, right? What do I gain for this, right? Or why, I don't get it, why should I should just focus on selling more, right? But and that's okay to have that mindset, right? Because not everyone can be, there needs to be that yin and yang. And I always say, and that's been also part of my fuel, right? Because I heard a lot of that at the beginning age of my servant leadership. It's just like, hey, why don't you just focus more of your time selling, right? And so how that motivated me was, you know what? You can do both. Because there's this myth that you do one, you're going to lack in the other, right? But there's actually a fine balance. And what I've learned is that when you give without expectations, without wanting to know directly, what do I get from this, but giving because you really care for the industry, for a group of people, for your community, what you end up getting back in return is tenfold of what you could ever ask for. And the way the universe works, the more I've given back because I've cared, the more opportunities I've seen. Right. And that's been a huge log on my fire to continue to be competitive, right? Where I'm number 6 realtor out of 19,000 in Chicago. Right. So those haters that, in the day back in the day would say, like, why don't you focus more on selling? I can say, like, why don't you focus more on selling? And why don't you focus more on giving back? Because you can do both. And for me, especially, in 2019, ascending to be our local president in Chicago, that was a big piece because I wanted to put out, right, that vision that people, you can give back at a high level and still run a highly successful team and business. And one doesn't have to give without the other.
It's, from what I've seen, some of our board presidents in the past and some of our, association presidents, the year that they were president was their best year, or one of their best years. And some of these people volunteer over 100 days a year on the road. On the road. We used to be on the road, but you know what I mean, like going to events and doing those things. We're going to get back to that eventually, and hopefully, have some, some of those productive conversations in person again. But it doesn't have to be a career limiting move. It doesn't have to be, a burden on what you do if you come into it with the right mindset, I think. And if you're ready to give,
absolutely,
ready to engage, ready to meet those people, I'm sure we could spend another hour talking about some stories of, people you've connected with and been able to help all over the country now because of the exposure in the areas and the people you've been exposed to. So, what do you do with this next, right? There's these peaks. I was the president. I was, you achieve some of these goals, and when you're in a mindset that you want to continue to give back, you need to find outlets while allowing people. You don't want to be the president over and over, right?
Right.
Where do you go next? What's next for you?
That's a great question. I think part of that is, especially in the industry we work in, right? Whether you're talking about leadership opportunity or just like business, especially as we're about to end this year, there's such a common place where people, they take a second to kind of reflect and be like, wow, this is a really great year. We achieved a lot of our goals, but then they're already thinking about what's next. What can I do that's better, right? And while I can understand and appreciate the hunger in that, I think it's super important to give yourself time to celebrate, be present, right? Because what I've learned is when you let your ego and when you let your greed consume you and think of like, this was cool, but no, we got to do better. We got to sell double next year. I got to be president of this. You let your ego and greed rob you of your gratitude. You don't give yourself time to be present, be grateful for the journey and what you've achieved. And when you do that, the importance of that is that when you are in that state of gratitude, it allows you to be present. So you're not thinking of anything else. And in that moment, when you're present and reflecting on what just happened, that's when clarity, I think, enters, for me at least. And you start to figure out, okay, now I'm ready to think about what that next step is, right? And for me, from a volunteer leadership, servant leadership standpoint, it's continually looking at who are those people that I need to tap on the shoulder, because this is just incredible, talented people, and we need those voices and thoughts into the room and around the table where it matters. And as I do that, whatever continues to present itself, I'm ready for, if it makes sense, right? And prioritize, to what's important in my life. But, I'm going to continue to push that, raise the bar, because like I said, this industry is too important to me to not to, right? And I think the other piece of that, Jody, is that, we also get sometimes, and this is, I think, ego and greed, when they kick in, we start to get infatuated with titles, right? President of local, president of state, president of national, this position.
Yeah.
And I think what happens when that happens, it dilutes what the meaning of that is. And I see this happen a lot, where a lot of people want to ascend to a certain position because they think that that position is going to define what their life was worth, right?
Yeah.
I want to be this because that's going to be the coolest thing I'm going to do. For me, it's the opposite. Every position I ascend to, it's really the work involved and the meaningfulness that I can make. And it's not that title and role is defining my life, but I get to redefine what that title and role is, what it means to be, because I'm going to do cooler shit in my life until the day I die, right? So I can't be measuring it based on what it says on my big name badge, right? That's, on my suit. It has to be the meaningful work and impact that you did to redefine what it meant to be that role. And so that's what I continue to look for and strive for and continue to evolve into.
It's definitely about the work. It's for
Yes.
sure. Sorry, Matt. But it's definitely about when I went into, I was chairman of the board of the regulator for a little while, and it wasn't about the position. It was about, we're going to move these yardsticks, and I have a clear vision of what I want. And the only way to try and, hey, maybe win or lose, I don't know, but I want to try this stuff. And the only way I can do that is to be there. So I guess I have to be that person. But, there was a year where I was vice chairman, and some people were asking me to run for a second term as the vice chairman. And I said, nope, I'm going to take a pause. We need to allow some other people to fill these roles, to get that experience. And, for me, that was, I didn't need a title. I didn't need a job. I just wanted to make sure the organization was going to get to the place it wanted to be. And so, that's a big boy moment. That's that's an adult moment where you don't do it for that, but, thinking forward, right? These organizations, you come, you spend some time and you leave. If you soak up all the airtime there and then you leave, what's left? These people don't have the experience. They don't have the depth. And so, you have to, if you're thinking about it, you really got to do it in the right way.
Yeah, that's what leadership is about, right? It's making the people around you better, making that impact, and then letting them ascend and do the same for other people,
What's your big goal right now? What's you kind of alluded to having a bigger goal or a higher goal or something you're trying to do more of, or, what is that for you right now? If you're willing to share, sorry, actually.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm one of those types of people that, not to say I don't have clarity wrapped around my goals, but I also like to have it organically shape into what that is, right? I want to continue from a servant leadership standpoint within our industry, organized real estate. I want to continue to ascend to the highest level where I can make an impact, right, for our members and for our industry and association. From a business standpoint, I want to continue to fuel our mission to be able to seek out our vision that we set out for our Weinberg Choi team. I want to continue to pour into our team and grow as an organization, right? Making impact. Legacy is a really important thing for us. It's part of our mission. And so it's continuing to just widen that through just other opportunities that we can seek out and find. So, I'm no longer, from a business standpoint, for many, many years, we're no longer like, when you ask like, hey, what's your goal? It's not units or volume anymore, right? It's how many people like we want to meet, right? How many people we need to have relationships with. So we're measuring things and looking at things from a different standpoint. And that's where we continue to, to hit those numbers and raise the bar.
How do you, but you want to take those conversations into the future, right? So, from being an evergreen video to a really, specific video, we're going into some tougher times, the interest rates and different things. What, how do you change that conversation, right? Where you're helping and you're trying to deliver the real message. The world's not perfect. There's some real stuff coming. You need to keep your financial house in order. You need to get organized. How are you guys redefining those conversations?
I think more than ever right now, when it comes to all realtors going into, especially ones that have gotten into industry since 2012, right? Before, at least in the States, the last recession, it's not so much, everyone like has this mindset of like, oh, you got to work harder for this deal. Like, the phone's not going to ring anymore. Yeah. But I look at it as differently, is that we have to really double down, triple down on showing what our value is to our consumers and clients. And so for me specifically, so I tell you one, right? I mentioned now we're focused on relationships. For the last 16 years, 89 to 91% year over year, we are referral-based business. We don't pay for online leads and do any sort of, lead generation, aggregate site models, not because it doesn't work. It's just not what makes me happy. Remember, I was seeking out happiness. So relationship wise, I know for the last 10 years, we typically will convert 12.75% of our database into clients that close. So now when we look at selling 150 million in real estate next year as a team, it's not so much how do I make the gap in the delta of finding more houses to sell. It's we just know we need to get into relationships with 1,000 more people. We need to add 1,000 more people into our data bank, pour into them, and the conversion, the math is going to make sense. So how do we get those 1,000 people? Because it's not like we're just, acquiring email addresses and putting them in. You have to establish the value for that relationship. And right now, more than ever, right, Jody, you hit on it. There's so much fake news and clickbaity articles about interest rates rising, bubble bursting, pricing correcting, you missed the market, worst time to sell, right? It's putting that into facts based on data and being that chief economist for each one of our clients. And so that's what we continue to do. And that's what we measure based off of how we make our touches into our database, making sure they understand, right? Yes, interest rates are high right now, but the opportunity, right, especially in Chicago, rental rates are at an all-time high since the day they started tracking that. Right. So it's a really good hedge, right? So do you want to pay your landlord a high amount, or do you want to build equity and pay, sure, a higher monthly payment because rates are up, but then hedge against the fact that, when they do come down, you can refinance, right? It's figuring out those wins. And more than ever right now, when the market was, especially the last couple of years, we'll call it the pandemic market, when demand was outpacing supply by so much, you could adopt, and people were getting away with like a one size fits all model. More than ever now, it's got to be super bespoke and tailored, right? One size has to fit one. You have to understand what that client is wanting, what their goal is, and figuring out a path that's specific to them, right? So it means more attention, more touches, more care. But that should be something that we should always be doing, regardless of where the interest rates are, right?
What are some of the ways right now that you're touching base with your clients, that you're giving some, you're allowing yourself to provide some value to your clients more than just, data about what's going on with the market? How are you getting in front of your clients right now?
Yeah. So here I'll do. I'll say just on this whole being the chief economist, right, for our clients, and then I'll go into even like a wider platform. One, right, and please, this is not me hating, right, but right now we're at this place where realtors think that the audience is coming to seek their information, especially on social media, so they can get away with, playing a video, pointing and seeing all these bubbles come up, and they assume that everyone's reading and understand what this means, right? Yes, some people that have content creation is very important. Don't get me wrong on that. And some people that have a large engaged audience, sure, that could work for, right? But then you have to look at what is your micro audience. Because Matt, as much as I love that you're engaged with my social media, being in Canada, I don't know how much that's going to help my business in achieving my goal outside of referrals that you might send me, right? So it's being hyper focused, hyper local and micro to your audience and bringing the data to them versus assuming that because you put out a TikTok, Instagram reel, that they're going to come and consume your information. So it's putting that same information and explaining it, right? And we do that by still creating content, but using it in multiple platforms, repurposing that, right? But ultimately, even before that, the basic concept you have to understand, right? Curating and cultivating relationships is like what I continue to focus on mastering. And the best way I can explain it, the best way that we've dumbed it down is a relationship is similar to walking up to an ATM machine. Okay. And for those that are like millennials on this call, ATM is like a brick and mortar Venmo, right? Or Cash App. Okay. It's a physical thing we used to go to put our card in and take money out, right? But when you go into an ATM, or we can even say your Venmo or Cash App, you really have two main purposes, right? To either make a deposit, put money into your account, or make a withdrawal and take money out. Same thing when it comes to relationships. When you meet someone for the first time, or it's someone that's in your sphere of influence, you can either make a deposit into their lives, provide value, or you can make a withdrawal, take and ask for something, right? And doing one or the other is not wrong or right. But I will tell you this, a lot of apprehension people feel, realtors in our industry, of picking up the phone and calling and asking for a referral, right? A lot of people will try and sweep it on the rug and say, like, you're in sales, get out of this industry if you don't like doing that. No, that's bullshit. You have to really honor that feeling, because when you really sift that and break that down, the feeling stems from, why am I going to ask this person for something when I've not provided any value to them? Yeah. And that's a very true statement. And once you figure that out, that's when you can take it to the next level, because then you understand, you know what? I'm going to make some deposits into this relationship, right? And that doesn't mean I'm showering people with physical gifts. It's being an active, good listener, right? And figuring out ways how I can make those connections, right? So I can make those deposits. I'll give you the best, one of my favorite examples from the last 10 years. Okay.
Perfect.
One of our good contacts, his name's Mark K. I did a face-to-face with him, right? And you know, I followed the Ford model, FORD, right? Family, occupation, recreation, dream. I'm always asking those questions, taking notes, right? First coffee meeting, asking these things, right? One of the things recreationally he said he likes to do is hike, right? So I go into dreams, I'm like, hey, what's like the dream trip, hike, whatever? And he goes like, you know what? One day I want to be able to rent an RV and go to every national park west of the Mississippi in the United States. And I want to go on all the hikes that I can. I'm like, wow, that's so powerful, right? So after that meeting, right, I identified that he's not a jerk and he's someone I wanted to establish a relationship with. So I always follow up with a handwritten note. And in it, right, I also went on Amazon and I paid, I think, $1.50. It cost me more to ship this thing, a Matchbox toy RV. Okay. And in the note, I said how grateful I am for the opportunity to connect and meet. And here's a little token of my appreciation, just a visualization. Can't wait for the day that you can actually step into the real life version of this, right? Cool. Fast forward, 2020, pandemic, no one's flying, everyone's renting RVs and going on trips. Mark went on that trip. He took my toy match car with him and he took a selfie with it at every national park sign and sent them to me and said, hey, I'm doing it. Thank you for this reminder, right? I have yet to help Mark personally with his real estate needs because he had just bought a really nice crib when I first met him, one that he's going to be there probably until he's an empty nester. But since that time, that was like 7 years ago, he has referred me 15 people that have equated to $30 million in real estate. Yeah, because I made that deposit, right? And it was a deposit that wasn't a monetary changing deposit or this lavish gift. It just showed that I listened and I cared, right? So those withdrawals that I can make from that relationship not only are welcome by him, but he's just ready to pour back into me and make deposits back into my life, right? So that's what we all need to be focusing on, especially for next year, and doubling and tripling down. Because here's the thing, right? The pie might be getting smaller, right? But we shouldn't be focusing at that. We should be focusing at how can I get a larger slice, right? And these people, right, that are locked in at 3% interest rates, that have 20% down or more equity, that probably won't be moving in the next year or two. Those are the people we need to be pouring into, making deposits, right? Giving them that information, which is a deposit, being that chief economist for them. Because when the rates start to drop, right, and people are motivated now and again to say like, hey, I want aspirational moves, you're going to be the first call they make, while everyone else is just trying to build those reestablish those relationships when
That's
the
what the
time
old
is
guys
right.
call back to basics, right? That's what this is. That's, if you've been doing this long enough, you've seen these kind of things. You just before this, you sort of talked about content creation, and maybe you run a big team, you've got a lot of exposure, your Instagram is sexy. Tell me about how you organize your content creation socials for the team. Do you help them? Do you give them stuff, guidance? Do you give them tools? Do you give, how do you like prescribe it? How do you find success in those, in getting everyone going in the same space?
Great question. So we shifted our focus, and the light bulb and the big aha that clicked for me one day was my wife. She is a reality TV junkie. She loves Keeping Up with the Kardashians. She loves the Real Housewives, anything Bravo, right? And all of a sudden, something that these shows that were just mind-blowingly dumb to me, I all of a sudden had equity into. I wanted to know what was happening, right? And I realized what it was is voyeurism, right? Being able to see in a snapshot into someone else's life, whether it was real or fake, right? We all love that. That's social media to me, right? So for us, when it comes to content creation, we follow that model, right? We don't shove real estate down your throats, not because it doesn't work. It definitely works, right? But for me, we equate it to how do we widen our funnel? Because we want to be the funnel of our network. And if I just focus on real estate, my funnel is as wide as the spout at the end because it's so hyper focused, right? And it might work individually for you guys. When you want to buy, you'll know, hey, I got to call Tommy because that's all I see. But I want you to be advocating for me to your entire network. And so for us to widen our network, we follow these 3-bucket rule. You have to focus on 3 buckets of your life, right? This is the hack of stuff that's important to you that you already do that you can just document, right? So you don't get burnt out. You don't have to create a habit because it's just your life. And so for everyone on our team, our 3 buckets are different. For me, it's family and friends, right? I'm always posting about my family or friends that are doing great, dope things, right? I want to celebrate them. 2 is, I know it's kind of hard to see in this screen here because it's only a top of it, but I'm a chubby guy. I love eating. And if you follow me, you know that I love eating. I eat out a ton. And that's part of my content. And also, I love traveling. When I travel, we work hard.
You have the best food recommendations without question. Like,
see,
no question.
I'm brand.
Best.
Okay,
Chicago,
so
best.
Hold that thought, right? So that and traveling too. And because we work so hard, when I travel, I get bougie. I want to travel to dope places, have dope experiences for me and my family, right? So that's bucket number 2. Number 3, you kind of alluded to earlier, right? My sneaker closet. I love fashion and I love art, right? Obviously, you can see in the back, especially pop art. So I'm always posting around those 3 things because those 3 things are aspects of my life that's a part of me every day. So I can't get burnt out on doing it because I just have to remember to take a little reel of it. So the beauty, and then I pepper in the real estate every once in a while. Now, the beauty is I'm establishing a brand and being authentic and genuine to who I am, right? And so when I post that I'm at a restaurant, right? And I love Instagram Reels especially, right? Being able to put that out there, what always happens is Matt will DM me like, dude, where are you right now? That meal looks great. Okay. That right there is a deposit slip you just gave me. Now I can say, hey, I'm actually at Maple and Ash. If you've never been, it's incredible. You got to get the seafood tower with the pasta back. It's not on the menu, but the sauce that's in there, they'll put in fresh pasta and you can eat up all that sauce, right? With the pasta. When you go, let me know because the GM is a homie of mine and I'll make sure you have no problem getting in and you get a really good table. I just made a deposit into his life, right? And so what I do now in the DMs is Matt will be like, oh my gosh, thank you. You're the best, man. You're my go-to, especially in Chicago. You always know where to eat. Now I get an opportunity, right, to shower, man, by dude. Thank you so much. Hey, man, I got to say, I love following you because you're doing so many cool things. I love how you're an ambassador too. And I can always catch up with you, dude. It's been such a long time. Can we connect for a coffee or even a phone call? I'd love to just catch up with you, right? Now he's like, holy shit, you just told me you're noticing me and you just complimented me and it's genuine, right? I am genuinely complimenting him. Of course, let's meet up. I would love to catch up with you, right? Now I'm setting appointments where I can now make more deposits and get the opportunity to make withdrawals from that relationship, right? That's where the power of social media. That's where when we say we lead generate off social media, it's not because we post something, people comment, I would like you to sell my home, right? That's very rare that happens, right? Unless doing paid ads, paid per clicks, right? SEOs. But when you're doing organic content like that, what you're doing is you're giving them a reason to reach out to you, right? To make a deposit. And then it's on you to be able to convert that into that face-to-face appointment where you can take it to the next level.
And it's coming from a place of you just being who you are.
Totally. That's the best part. I'm genuine, authentic. If you all don't care about my family or your family and sneakers and eating out, and you try and do this, you're going to burn out in 3 days, right? That's why it's figuring out authentically, what are those 3 buckets in your life that you want to create content in, because you're already doing it on a daily basis. And now you're just doing that, right? And you pepper in, hey, when you do a new listing walkthrough, or maybe you stop by a broker's open house and you're taking pictures of the view or the kitchen or whatnot, it's the reminders of not only is TC a cool dude that I want to work with, that I like, but shit, he also kills it in real estate. Yeah, I gotta figure out ways to bring him opportunity.
We need to be respectful of your time.
Yes.
And we're nearing that end of our time. Is there one last thing you just want to leave with us that you know has been on your mind recently? Something that maybe you haven't touched on about today? Is there something that you're thinking about recently?
You know what? I would say thank you for asking that. I would say this, right? Kind of going back to the last conversation, you know, with inflation, interest rates, demand starting to curb a little bit, inventory still staying flat because no one wants to sell. Those agents, especially that have never seen a market like this, right? People that are freaking out, you know, and as much as like you hear people say, well, good, like, you know, good riddance, you know, let's, we have too many people in our industry anyways, blah, 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 the scarcity mindset. For me, I'm the opposite, right? Because like I said, my market share is not going to change, right? I want to be able to raise the bar for other people. So it's just knowing that, listen, to those people that are feeling that uncertainty, you have to just continue to track where your business is coming from so you can understand what activity you should be focusing on and double and triple down on that, right? And then the other piece of that, right, is just understanding, right? Every breakdown I've ever faced in my life was always followed by a breakthrough, right? That's on the other side of this. Just constantly making sure that you make it to that breakthrough. And the other piece, and especially in the social media age where everyone's following everything and hustle mentality and whatnot, it's easy to compare yourself to other people and start to benchmark, right? That's not fair, right? Just know that the direction that you travel in is much more important than the speed. Doesn't matter how quickly or how long it takes for you to get to where you're going. What's more important is to know where your North Star is, to follow that path, to make sure you're going in the right direction. Because when you get there, it doesn't matter, right? You're going to be able to celebrate that. And that's all it is. Just focus on those 3 things and everything's going to be great. And we'll be able to celebrate and be cheery about the market once again very soon.
It's a perfect time to dig into Simon Sinek's, values about infinite mindset.
Yes.
Right. If you want to go back to basics and you want to read some cool stuff or whatever, those kind of things, really gear yourself up to, making deposits, thinking about yourself not as competition with other people, but, delivering your own brand, delivering your own values. So, that's where we're going today, I think. Matt, what do you think?
I'm waiting for my was it Tommyisms book? My little Tommyisms. I know for sure Tommy knows what I'm talking about. Those little books, but anyways, you're just full of one-liners. You're just quotes. That's all you are.
Yeah, I'll leave you with the greatest Tommyism. Everyone should always remember. If the name of the restaurant doesn't have the word steak in it, don't ever order the steak. Okay.
Perfect.
I've learned that, in very hard lessons before.
Tommy, thank you so much for
Appreciate
spending
it.
that bit of time
My
with us,
pleasure.
and really just pouring out to us and to everyone what's going on in your head, and I absolutely love it. Thank you so much for your time. I really do
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
My pleasure, fellas.
Yeah,
Have a
thanks
great
for everyone,
weekend.
Ottawa and 2.0. Thanks. Cheers.
We'll see you soon.
Thanks so much.
See you soon.
Bye bye.